Hi, good afternoon again, viewers. This will be my second video for today. Happy Friday for those who missed the first video. I think I'm going to wear white more often. White looks good. Good feeling on Friday. I wanted to talk quickly. Let me look at the time to make sure I don't go over time. I wanted to talk quickly about landlords and tenants, right? So I'm not going to get too technical with the law, but I'm going to say some things. There is a new amendment that is with the government. It was with the last government. If you watch some of my videos, I have mentioned this a number of times. There is a new amendment to an act, a law, which was passed back in 2009 called the Residential Tenancies Act, right? It was passed under then government UDP, and they came out of government the next election, and the PPM was in power. I think it's one, two, or three elections after that. I think they may have been the government in power for about 12 years. 4 and 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I think they may have been in power for 12 years before this last government in 2021. And so that, I'm not blaming the PPM, I'm just saying to you that the legislation was passed in 2009 under the then UDP government. It was passed and put in force, but it was not put in force, meaning it was not the active legislation that was governing. It was not the actual law that was governing landlords and tenants, so it wasn't used. And that happens sometimes. Laws are passed and they're actually not activated so that they can become what is used on an everyday basis for what happens in the country. And so that's what happened with the Residential Tenancies Act 2009. It changed from the landlord and tenant law or landlord and tenant law. So blame the UDP and blame PPM people. I wouldn't say to blame the last administration because they did try to work on it when they took power in 2021. I will say, because everyone knows by now that I am an advocate, and I'm sorry, my glasses keep feeling like they're slipping off. That's why I'm always touching them. But I don't get paid for this. I do it out of the goodness of my own heart. I do it from a standpoint of advocating for people to have free information and knowledge, and also to try to present that information in a way that many of you can understand, but not with a lot of big words and put together in a structure that is hard for you to understand. And so the Residential Tenancies Act amendment now has been before government since the last administration. They tackled that piece of law, which is now called an act. Again, I have to say this for you guys, but I like to use the word law anyway. And they made some amendments to it, including getting a tribunal. Apparently, the first time it was passed under the UDP government. Anyway, I don't want to get too technical because I am aware of how things work because of studying law and political and government and stuff like that. I don't know everything. Matter of fact, I don't even know half of everything. But that was passed and it was put on a shelf. That's what I call it, for about 14 years. And when I came back from school and I was trying to find a place to live, and I discovered that there was no modern law. Now, there's other areas and other laws that if a matter goes to court, the courts can use to deal with landlord and tenants law. But to say a strict law that was replacing the landlord and tenant law was enforced and being used, that Residential Tenancies Act was not. It was not. And so they've made some changes, the last government. you people, I don't mean to say you people, it's just a fond way of me addressing people. I would recommend you try to listen to everything that's going on in this country, because it does affect you. If you live and work and reside here, because some people reside here on seasonal basis, anything that happens in the waters surrounding the three Cayman Islands is your business. So when Parliament is in session, when government sends out notifications, when people get online and make videos and posts and stuff about what's happening in the Cayman Islands, make it your business, not just about immigration, not just about the driver's license fees, right? So I say that to say this, that this new amendment, it has been amended for almost 3 years now, but of course, social issues, I will say this out of respect for the community, but no disrespect towards the government, social issues do tend to take the back burner when it comes to things that are taken care of by most governments worldwide. Anything to do with the community and the public and children and families and anything like that, they generally take second place, back burner sort of thing. And I don't always believe that that is intentional, but so I say people are crying out for relief. It's not just immigrants that are here on work permits. Our Caymanian people are here also crying for relief for landlords and tenants. Many Caymanians who own homes have now resorted to renting a room in their property or building onto their private property and renting in that way. So of course they have special interest. I remember, I'm going to say this quick, and this person will know who it is if this video crosses their path. When I first got back, and I said to this MP, I said, why isn't this law? Why has it been 14 years has passed? And the person said, well, it's just a bill. And it doesn't matter because, most of the landlords are Caymanians. And I said, that's exactly why we need it. 14 years is a long time to take not a bill, but an act that has been passed, but put on a shelf for 14 years is no longer a bill. And this MP should have known that. But I had to take my phone out and show the person, this is not a bill anymore. And you were on the government, not on the UDP government when it was passed, but you were there as an MP or what they used to call a legislative assembly member. So you know how far back that goes. So that was wrong. It was no longer a bill. And to say that you're a Caymanian, but you're saying it benefits most of the landlord. Well, the person didn't say it benefits. The person said most of the landlords are Caymanians. So you're telling me you're an MP and you're thinking to a disadvantage to your own people that, oh, it's just a bill, and most of the landlords are Caymanians, meaning you're just there and not concerned about Caymanians. That's how I interpreted it. So I pulled my phone out, pulled it up, and showed the person this is no longer a bill, and our Caymanians are why this should be passed. So anyway, it was before the government last election, so I give them credit for tackling that and taking that on, and they did it very fast and made the amendments. And I know former Premier Mr. Panton had endeavored in the Parliament before last year, actually. Was it? Oh wow, we're almost into a year already for this new government. Well, it was before last election that he had endeavored that they were going to bring it back before the House to try to get it passed. So I am hoping and praying that this new government will bring those amendments and table them before the House and try to get some relief, because when you make these kind of laws, it covers small time landlords, it covers major properties that are renting, but it has to be done. And like this new immigration law, the Residential Tenancies Act is going to be fought against, because the people that make a lot of money, not Caymanians, not local Caymanians, not working class Caymanians, but the people that make a lot of money off of residential properties and off of property management, including realtors, are going to fight back on some of the things. I sorry guys, I have to say it because it's the truth. So the small time landlords, the persons that are renting, it's going to be challenging for the government, just like how we're dealing with the immigration that Mr. Miles, who I think it's going to be an uprising in the Cayman Islands by many voters, especially prospect voters. If anyone thinks about trying to bring up a no confidence vote against Minister Michael Miles, it's foolish, for lack of a better word. My mother always said, don't call people a fool, but it's foolish to try and do it. The people have spoken. The minister has stepped up and represented on behalf of the people, but the stakeholders, as they call them, the big honchos and whoever, I heard, are trying to fight it down. So they're going to deal with it. They're going to work it out. But it'll be foolish to try and bring a motion of no confidence against Minister Miles that I'm hearing is trying to be done. So I hope they work it out. This morning I understand, was saying that there's going to be some changes. No, that's wrong. But anyway, we're talking about Minister Miles with the immigration law. I don't want to talk about immigration on this live. And I was just using that as an example to say that like immigration, rental and the rental law is going to be very challenging, because there's going to be people, as we know, there's a lot of wealthy people on this island. Many of them have properties that are rented and managed by management companies or real estate companies, real estate agents. And so one law will be across the board, and some of them won't like it. But at this point, this is what I'm going to say. The general expectation with rentals. Now, most rentals are for a year period. When you rent a property, you generally get a contract. And in that contract, it generally says how long your rental contract is for. And generally, it's a year. Now, landlords or realtors or property managers, whoever is taking care of a rental property, they have the right, if they want, to ask for first month's rent, last month's rent, and a deposit. Now, the last month's rent is not the deposit. People hear that. The last month's rent can be used in place of not paying your last month's rent, because you're basically paying that up front. You're paying the first month's rent and the last month's rent up front. Your deposit is for damages to the property. The landlord can use the deposit if you leave the property beforehand. Generally, they have the right to forfeit, keep your deposit. If you break the lease, or you just move out without giving proper notice, or if you leave the property and you have not paid your rent in full for that month before you leave, they can withhold your deposit that can be used for that at the time to cover anything that's left behind, whether past due rent, damages to the property. They can use it. If they ask you for first month rent, last month rent, and deposit, they have the right to do that. They have the right. Now, if your lease says you pay rent by a monthly basis, every 30 days, that's the amount of notice you have to give. If you don't give 30 days notice, your deposit can be used. That's not what it's for, but the landlord can use your deposit to pay for any rent that have not been paid. The other thing, when you rent a property, the understanding and expectation, if you have a 2-bedroom apartment, it is usually 4 adults per bedroom. 4 adults per bedroom. 1-bedroom apartment, 2 adults per bedroom. It is not expected that you have people sleeping in the living room, or you put extra beds in the bedroom for 4 adults in each bedroom. That's not the expectation, and that's not the way it's supposed to work. So if you overcrowd someone's apartment or property or house, you're breaking the law in essence. You're breaking the agreements, and I encourage landlords to make these things clear in these agreements. Because I've had people complaining to me, landlords, tenants, non-Caymanians, complaining about these things. Certain nationalities like to crowd up in an apartment because that's what they do. They will have a 1-bedroom and there's 6 people sleeping in that 1-bedroom. They'll have a 2-bedroom and there's 8 to 12 people staying in a 2-bedroom. It puts wear and tear on the property, on the furniture, because Cayman is a place that rents furnished, not like the States where they only rent you with appliances and you bring your own furniture. It puts wear and tear on the property itself, the actual unit, and on the appliances and the furniture. So I would encourage landlords, property owners, realtors, I believe already know this, and property owners already know it. Put in any contract that you sign with a renter that there is only a certain amount of people that are supposed to live. And the property owners and landlords have a right to check that property every month, as long as they give you notice and say, I'm coming to check the property on Wednesday. Because they have a right to inspect to see the upkeep of the property, and they have a right to inspect to see how many people are living in that property. And they can tell that by how things are done. So don't complain that landlords come into your property and they're not supposed to once you're leasing, because they can. Now, if they just pop up at your door one day and knock and say, hey, I want to come inspect, that's wrong. That's not supposed to be so. They also have a right to not rent for people with children. They have a right because it's their property. Now, in the States where I studied, they have discrimination laws. So you can't really put that on rental properties ads that we're renting without children, or we're not taking any NAU. But as far as I know, Cayman don't have any anti-discrimination laws yet, or if they are, they're outdated. I think that is tasteless for landlords to do so. They can indirectly, without your knowledge, assess whether they want to take you with children once they've had an interview with you. If they agree to show you the property and they've had an interview with you and they just decline your application, they don't have to put on ads, no children or no NAU. If you have a property, then you do it the way as if you're doing a job interview. So for landlords to do that, I think it's tasteless and unprofessional. But they do have a right to decline people with children if they want to, within their own confines. Because really and truly, a lot of people do not have control of their children, and they destroy the landlord's properties, and often at a cost that isn't covered by the deposit. So people bear that in mind when you're talking about the landlords don't want to rent with children and they're cruel and they're this and they're that. It's their property, right? Landlords are supposed to take the money that they've taken from you, that they've collected, or property. I'm just going to say landlords, and that means the persons that are managing the property, whether they own it or they're realtors or property managers. It is expected that when they take your money, that money is put into escrow. It is not spent by that landlord for other reasons. It's put into escrow, which means a bank account specifically to hold that money until that lease is over. So they can determine how that money is used, especially the portion that has to be returned to the tenant, right? The landlord can do that. That's what they're really expected to do. So as a tenant, if you've done all the right things, given your notice, didn't leave the place in shambles, didn't destroy the people's place, and you're entitled to your deposit back, and they're not giving it to you back, chances are they may have used it for something else, especially personal landlords that just have 1 or 2 little places to rent. And that is an expectation that it's against the law, right? So if you know that you have a lease that you signed for a year or 6 months and you have to pay your rent, or even 15 months or 2 years, and you know you have to pay your rent every 30 days, you have to give 30 days notice. You cannot just pick up and leave the property and then say, oh, these people won't return my deposit. There's a lot of things that goes into that, and you have to be honest when you make these comments and complaints online, right? If people don't want you washing your cars on their property, they have a right to say that. If they give you a contract, and landlords, I want to tell you this again, especially people who are renting rooms or renting with water and lights included, you have to state in a contract. A contract doesn't have to be anything big, just something put in writing, the names of the parties, the landlord and the tenant, and what is expected, what the rent is and for how long, how often it's supposed to be paid, and both parties sign, both sides sign. So if your lease says you can't have overnight guests, you can't have overnight guests. Because especially, like I said, if your water and lights are included, the landlord is looking at it as though you're using extra water and extra lights. So they have a right to decline you having those. They shouldn't be peeping on you all the time. They shouldn't be harassing you, because that is harassment. That every minute they're watching everything you're doing and telling you, I see you doing this, I see you doing that. That's harassment. If you're renting a room and sharing common areas, the landlords have the right, the understanding is that they can put, not spyware, but they can put safety, security monitors around their property. Most landlords will tell you that they do not want derelict vehicles or unregistered vehicles on the property. So if your vehicle isn't working, if they come and they see a sticker that has been expired, in the States, you know what they do? They have every property or every landlord have a tow truck on speed dial. So if they pass and see a junky car or a car up on jack up on blocks, or it's been there and not moved for at least a week, and they haven't notified the landlord why it's like that, they get a tow truck and come and tow it, and it's at your own expense to get it back, because it's not supposed to be there. If your tag has been expired for at least a year and your vehicle is not renewed, they get it towed because it's not supposed to be there. It's devaluing the property and it's making the property look shaggy. So when landlords say that they're going to do things like that, you have to understand. And landlords, I suggest you put those things in your lease also, right? The other thing I wanted to say about landlords is you have to make the terms and conditions of your rental clear. It doesn't have to be in an illegal language or in a big language. You just write it like you're speaking to someone, like you're speaking to the tenant, and just write it down or get someone to write it for you. You know, there's a lot of law firms that does landlord and tenants, and anyone that's practicing the law without being a qualified lawyer in the Cayman Islands to practice, you're committing an offense. So if anybody tell you, yeah, I can write this contract for you like a lawyer, they're lying for you. They're lying to you. But there's a lot of law firms and a lot of document preparers who can just verbally type things up for you, and you can sign as though just a regular document, and you get a witness, or they'll sign with you, whatever the case may be. But landlords, if people have done the right thing, you have your contracts and they've done all that they're supposed to do with the contracts, you should give the people back their money. You shouldn't have spent it. I know it's hard for everyone, but especially the small-time employers, the small-time landlords have, from what has been shared with me, what I've heard, they take people's money and spend it, and people can show that they've operated the best that they can as a tenant, and they just want to move on. Now, I know some companies have brought people from across the world. They've spent thousands of dollars to bring employees from across the world. They've also spent money to help them find places to rent. And sometimes companies actually put their names on these leases to help these employees. And then the employees will move out and the companies will be responsible for paying back all the fees. You understand? And so that is going to be a consideration too in some of the amendments to the new Residential Tenancies Act, because you can't do that. You can't have a company, you have an agreement with a company and then you just decide to, it's like them saying, immigration saying, hey, you're not going to be able to just hop how you want. You have to have a legitimate reason to move from one employer to the next. You have to have a legitimate reason to want to move from one tenant to the landlord to the next. If a company has put their name and their reputation on the line for you after they've spent money to bring you over from countries across the world, we can't talk about our neighbors who they can just buy a ticket and come here. But some of them do, many of you tenants do that. Many of you tenants do that. We have landlords who do not spell it out clear. The laws, basically the understanding of the law is that you have to tell people and you have to show them the utility bill and how it is divvied up if more than one person is on a meter. You can't just go to the tenant and say, hey, your water bill is, like for instance me, I have 3 tenants on one side, 3 tenants on the other side, and my water bill, just for me, is usually a little double of each of those people. One family have kids, the other family is 2 adults and 1 child. And my water bill, because we're all in the same meter, I can see the invoice if I want. Landlord, you're expected to show the tenants the invoices, the bills, and explain to them how it is divided up. If you don't do so, you could be breaching your tenants' rights. And that is another thing. Again, I will say, if you're renting, the expectation is 2 adults per bedroom, not occupying the living room. Now, if you have visitors, the standard time that is given to have stayover visitors, that doesn't mean an overnight guest per se like that. If your landlord says no overnight guest, that's no overnight guest. But it's different for regular tenancies. If you may have your mom come from the US or the UK or wherever else you have family come from, your kids, and they need to bunk with you and they are here for like 14 days and you have to let your landlord know, oh, I have a relative or a friend that's visiting and staying for 14 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It's at the discretion of the landlord. But you just can't have people move in and stay like that if your landlord say only 2 people per apartment per bedroom. You cannot expect to just think that the landlord don't have the right to do that because you have signed a lease with them. That's not how it works, guys. Right? So let me think what else I can cover under this. Guys, you have to go back and listen to the video. It's been about half an hour now. You have to go back and listen to this video. I think I've covered just about everything. I'm just going to go here and see who's made a little comment that I could probably read and, maybe answer for them. But I think I've covered it all. Like I said, I hope the new government will have something to say about the amendments that most of the people that are in the new government right now, half I would say, or more than half, at least half of the new government are people who were there from last government, and so they are very familiar with these things. And I do believe that most of our sitting MPs are in agreement with landlord and tenant reforms, because every district has residential properties in them. And so I haven't heard any, we don't always hear everything on the road, but I haven't heard of any MP not wanting to, change the laws and bring some relief to residential tenancies and so forth. But of course, there's always more important things showing up. I have a call coming in here. I hope you can hear me. And so let me me come out of that. I just want to see this here before I cut this off. I don't see anything where I need to, not Jamaica, we don't share. That's very good, Carrie. Okay, it's just people mostly joining. I'm glad to see that you joined. What are the laws to protect the tenants? I've just basically said everything here, talent over hype. You can go back and listen. If you had a particular question, you could have posed it. And then my landlord gave a tenant 60 days notice plus never gave back deposit. Well, the landlord would have to say why they gave notice when they gave you the notice. They just can't. If you're paying rent every 30 days, they have to give you a reason why they're giving you notice. If they give you 16 days, then it's something really extreme why they're giving 16 days, but they're really supposed to give you 30 days unless there's a threat to safety or you're really messing up their property, which becomes a criminal offense. And then they have to go to the courts and get you evicted. And you also have the right as a tenant to go to the court's office and file a small claims court. It's $25, and the courts have a little packet that you can get, and it's very easy if you can read English or get somebody to read. And you can sue your landlord if you want, if you think you have the just rights, right? And landlord can sue you too. But if everybody must do that, what person with child going to live, sweetheart? I don't know. Like I said, right now, I think it's discrimination for properties to do that, but I don't know of any laws that says that they can't. But if they do, they can take that. They can even, I don't know, that's what the deposit is for. But then you just have to keep looking for a property that will take children. And I know that's hard in Cayman because we're limited with resources, housing resources. The landlord that holds to tenants deposit even when they leave, that's called a thief. I don't know about that, talent over hype. They must give you a reason in writing why they're holding your deposit or why they decide not to give it to you back. So if they do that, tell them you want it in writing. Funny enough, landlord drafts contracts only for themselves, and if there is no law, why take deposit? I didn't say that there isn't any law. And if they draft a contract only for themselves, then you don't have to sign it. I know sometimes you get desperate because you need a place to stay, but you don't have to sign it. You can say, hey, can you put this in there? Can you put that in there? And I'm glad that I'm doing this video because I can share this with the government in some sort of how, or just copy them in on it, and they can see what people are thinking. But you can't always just jump on social media and just talk about things and not go to the government, whether you can vote here or not. Well, what about the landlord who every year then put more on the rent? They have the right to do that too. How much they jack up the rent for, how much they add the rent for is another concern, because I know people have said, I saw some paperwork, in a year, the rent was raised 4 times. And by the end of that year, I think it was maybe about $500 that tenant was paying additionally for the end of the year, and they ended up having to move. And these are the things that the government have to take into consideration. What about you get a day off and using the AC, and they say you can't use AC and you paying? Well, if they're charging you extra for the AC, they shouldn't tell you that. If they're saying electrical is included, they shouldn't tell you that, because all of those things you should make sure are in the contract, and you should say, can you put this in the contract before I sign it? You have to advocate for yourself. You can't just make people take advantage of you. My rent went from $1,300 and now it's $1,800. Is that fair? Well, Gordon Jackson, it depends on how long you've been in that property and how often they raised it, that there's a $500 difference. You need to say, look at all those things. Oh my gosh, Clara, what is it? Clahar. Listen, I'm Gordon Jackson. You can't tell me when to give feedback on comments because I'm not reading all of your comments until now. I have to say what I have to say first. And if you don't want to wait, sir, I don't know what to tell you. You can just go in and find another, I don't know. But I'm the one that's facilitating this live, so I can do it how I want. I say what I have to say first, and then if I have time, I read the comments and try to answer. Like that's why I said if I am going to continue doing live, I'm going to do it on Facebook so I can look back at the comments and try to answer them, because once a live is over on Instagram, you can't go back on the comments. Okay, I read that already, Day Queen. So a lot of landlords don't want to give back when the time has come. I covered that under this video. You can watch the video when I'm finished. Yes, Madridista _876. Thank God I got a reasonable and fair landlord. That's good to hear. Good to read. And so that's all the comments. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. And I want to talk about pension next and the new immigration information that was released today. It's not talking about the amendments to the actual law. It's talking about some fees, as far as I can understand. So I will read that to make sure, and then I will get back and say something to that about you guys. Okay, somebody made 3 new comments. Let me see here. Okay, they're done. Anyway, guys, gotta go. Talk to you soon. This is Landlord and Tenants. I'm going to talk about pension and some immigration information that was released today.